Sarah stared at the small birthday cake sitting on her kitchen table. The single candle flickered in the dim light of her apartment, casting dancing shadows on the empty walls. 28 years old today, and not a single person had remembered. Her phone lay silent beside the cake. No messages, no calls, no birthday wishes. The apartment felt colder than usual. Sarah pulled her sweater tighter around her shoulders and glanced at the clock on the microwave. 7:30 in the evening. She had spent the entire day hoping someone would remember, checking her phone every few minutes, waiting for that familiar buzz of a text message or the ring of a call. Her parents lived 3 states away and had grown distant since her divorce 2 years ago. They blamed her for the marriage failing, saying she should have tried harder to make it work. Her few friends had slowly drifted away after the divorce too. It seemed like everyone had chosen sides, and unfortunately, they had chosen her ex-husband's side. Sarah worked as a librarian at the local elementary school. The children loved her and she loved them back, but adult friendships had become harder to maintain. She spent her days surrounded by people but felt more alone than ever. The other teachers were friendly enough, but they all had their own families to go home to, their own lives to live. She had bought the cake herself that morning from the grocery store bakery. The cashier had smiled and asked if it was for someone special. Sarah had nodded and said yes, not wanting to admit it was for herself. She had even picked out a pretty candle with silver sparkles on it, thinking it would make the moment feel less pathetic. Now, sitting in her quiet apartment, Sarah realized how foolish she had been. Who celebrates their own birthday alone? She should have just ignored the day entirely, treated it like any other Thursday. Instead, she had set herself up for disappointment. The silence in the apartment was broken only by the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional car passing by outside her window. Sarah lived on the 2nd floor of an older building, in a neighborhood that was slowly being revitalized. Young families were moving in, buying up the small houses and fixing them up. She could hear children playing in the yard next door sometimes, their laughter drifting through her windows. Sarah had always wanted children of her own. She and her ex-husband had talked about it, made plans, even picked out names, but those dreams had died along with their marriage. Now at 28, she felt like time was slipping away from her. All her college friends were posting pictures of their babies on social media, showing off their perfect families and happy lives. She picked up her phone and scrolled through Facebook, torturing herself with images of birthday celebrations. Her college roommate had posted pictures from her own birthday party last month, surrounded by dozens of friends and family members. Her cousin in California had shared photos from her surprise party, complete with decorations and a professional photographer. Sarah closed the app and set her phone face down on the table. This was exactly what she shouldn't be doing, comparing her life to everyone else's highlight reel. She knew that social media only showed the good parts, that everyone had struggles and lonely moments. But knowing that didn't make her feel any less isolated. The candle had burned down quite a bit while she sat lost in thought. A small pool of wax had formed around the base, and she realized she should probably make her wish and blow it out before it burned out on its own. But what was there to wish for? A better job? Friends who actually remembered important dates? Someone to love who would love her back? Sarah closed her eyes and made a simple wish. She wished for things to get better, for her life to feel less empty, for some kind of change that would bring meaning back into her days. It wasn't specific or dramatic, just a quiet plea for something different. She blew out the candle and sat in the darkness for a moment. The smell of vanilla filled the air from the extinguished flame. She should cut herself a piece of cake, she thought. After all, she had paid $12 for it. But she didn't feel much like eating. Instead, Sarah walked over to her living room window and looked out at the street below. The evening was warm for October, and she could see people walking their dogs, couples holding hands, teenagers riding bikes. Life was happening all around her, and she felt like she was watching it through glass, separate from it all. Her neighbor across the street was grilling on his back patio. She could see him through the trees, flipping burgers while 2 small children ran around the yard. His wife came out with drinks and kissed him on the cheek. It was such a simple, ordinary moment, but it made Sarah's chest ache with longing. She had imagined her life would be different by now. When she was in college, she thought she would be married with kids by 30, living in a house with a yard and a dog, hosting dinner parties and holiday gatherings. Instead, she was alone in a small apartment, eating takeout for dinner most nights and spending weekends reading books and watching Netflix. Sarah returned to the kitchen and cut a small piece of cake. It was actually quite good, moist and sweet with cream cheese frosting. She ate it slowly, savoring each bite, trying to find some small joy in the moment. Tomorrow she would go back to work, smile at the children, help them find books, and pretend that everything was fine. But tonight, on her birthday, she allowed herself to feel the full weight of her loneliness. She sat at her kitchen table eating birthday cake in the dark and wondered if things would ever change. She wondered if she would spend next year's birthday the same way, alone with a store-bought cake and a single candle. Outside, she could hear the neighbors' children laughing as they played in their yard. The sound drifted through her open window like a reminder of all the things missing from her life. Sarah finished her cake and put the rest away in the refrigerator. Maybe tomorrow would be different. Maybe tomorrow something would change. But for now, she would go to bed early and try not to think about how quiet her phone had been all day. Sarah stared at the small birthday cake sitting on her kitchen table. The single candle flickered in the dim light of her apartment, casting dancing shadows on the empty walls. 28 years old today, and not a single person had remembered. Her phone lay silent beside the cake, no messages, no calls, no birthday wishes. The apartment felt colder than usual. Sarah pulled her sweater tighter around her shoulders and glanced at the clock on the microwave. 7:30 in the evening. She had spent the entire day hoping someone would remember, checking her phone every few minutes, waiting for that familiar buzz of a text message or the ring of a call. Her parents lived 3 states away and had grown distant since her divorce 2 years ago. They blamed her for the marriage failing, saying she should have tried harder to make it work. Her few friends had slowly drifted away after the divorce too. It seemed like everyone had chosen sides, and unfortunately, they had chosen her ex-husband's side. Sarah worked as a librarian at the local elementary school. The children loved her and she loved them back, but adult friendships had become harder to maintain. She spent her days surrounded by people, but felt more alone than ever. The other teachers were friendly enough, but they all had their own families to go home to, their own lives to live. She had bought the cake herself that morning from the grocery store bakery. The cashier had smiled and asked if it was for someone special. Sarah had nodded and said yes, not wanting to admit it was for herself. She had even picked out a pretty candle with silver sparkles on it, thinking it would make the moment feel less pathetic. Now, sitting in her quiet apartment, Sarah realized how foolish she had been. Who celebrates their own birthday alone? She should have just ignored the day entirely, treated it like any other Thursday. Instead, she had set herself up for disappointment. The silence in the apartment was broken only by the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional car passing by outside her window. Sarah lived on the second floor of an older building in a neighborhood that was slowly being revitalized. Young families were moving in, buying up the small houses and fixing them up. She could hear children playing in the yard next door sometimes, their laughter drifting through her windows. Sarah had always wanted children of her own. She and her ex-husband had talked about it, made plans, even picked out names. But those dreams had died along with their marriage. Now, at 28, she felt like time was slipping away from her. All her college friends were posting pictures of their babies on social media, showing off their perfect families and happy lives. She picked up her phone and scrolled through Facebook, torturing herself with images of birthday celebrations. Her college roommate had posted pictures from her own birthday party last month, surrounded by dozens of friends and family members. Her cousin in California had shared photos from her surprise party, complete with decorations and a professional photographer. Sarah closed the app and set her phone face down on the table. This was exactly what she shouldn't be doing, comparing her life to everyone else's highlight reel. She knew that social media only showed the good parts, that everyone had struggles and lonely moments, but knowing that didn't make her feel any less isolated. The candle had burned down quite a bit while she sat lost in thought. A small pool of wax had formed around the base, and she realized she should probably make her wish and blow it out before it burned out on its own. But what was there to wish for? A better job? Friends who actually remembered important dates? Someone to love who would love her back? Sarah closed her eyes and made a simple wish. She wished for things to get better, for her life to feel less empty, for some kind of change that would bring meaning back into her days. It wasn't specific or dramatic, just a quiet plea for something different. She blew out the candle and sat in the darkness for a moment. The smell of vanilla filled the air from the extinguished flame. She should cut herself a piece of cake, she thought. After all, she had paid $12 for it. But she didn't feel much like eating. Instead, Sarah walked over to her living room window and looked out at the street below. The evening was warm for October, and she could see people walking their dogs, couples holding hands, teenagers riding bikes. Life was happening all around her, and she felt like she was watching it through glass, separate from it all. Her neighbor across the street was grilling on his back patio. She could see him through the trees, flipping burgers while two small children ran around the yard. His wife came out with drinks and kissed him on the cheek. It was such a simple, ordinary moment, but it made Sarah's chest ache with longing. She had imagined her life would be different by now. When she was in college, she thought she would be married with kids by 30, living in a house with a yard and a dog, hosting dinner parties and holiday gatherings. Instead, she was alone in a small apartment, eating takeout for dinner most nights and spending weekends reading books and watching Netflix. Sarah returned to the kitchen and cut a small piece of cake. It was actually quite good, moist and sweet with cream cheese frosting. She ate it slowly, savoring each bite, trying to find some small joy in the moment. Tomorrow she would go back to work, smile at the children, help them find books, and pretend that everything was fine. But tonight, on her birthday, she allowed herself to feel the full weight of her loneliness. She sat at her kitchen table, eating birthday cake in the dark, and wondered if things would ever change. She wondered if she would spend next year's birthday the same way, alone with a store-bought cake and a single candle. Outside, she could hear the neighbors' children laughing as they played in their yard. The sound drifted through her open window like a reminder of all the things missing from her life. Sarah finished her cake and put the rest away in the refrigerator. Maybe tomorrow would be different. Maybe tomorrow something would change. But for now, she would go to bed early and try not to think about how quiet her phone had been all day. Tuesday afternoon came quickly, and Sarah found herself standing outside Roosevelt Elementary School, a different building from where she worked, feeling nervous butterflies in her stomach. She clutched a bag of children's books she had brought from home, wanting to be prepared for whatever reading level her assigned child might be. Margaret met her at the front entrance with a warm smile and led her through the hallways to a cheerful classroom, decorated with reading posters and comfortable beanbag chairs scattered around bookshelves. "Sarah, I'd like you to meet David," Margaret said, gesturing toward a man who was kneeling beside a small boy with dark hair and serious brown eyes. David stood up and extended his hand to Sarah. He was tall, with kind eyes and an easy smile, probably in his mid-30s. "Nice to meet you, Sarah. I hear you're joining our reading family." "Reading family?" Sarah asked, shaking his hand and noticing how warm and genuine his grip was. "That's what we call our volunteer group," David explained. "We all look out for each other and the kids. This little guy here is Tommy." He ruffled the boy's hair affectionately. "Tommy, can you say hello to Miss Sarah?" Tommy looked up at Sarah with curious eyes but didn't speak. He seemed to be about 7 years old, small for his age, and was holding tightly to a worn stuffed dinosaur. "Tommy's a bit shy at first," David explained quietly. "He's been coming here for about a month, and we've become great friends. Haven't we, buddy?" Tommy nodded but continued to study Sarah with those serious eyes. Margaret checked her clipboard. "Sarah, you'll be working with Emma today. She's 8 years old and absolutely loves stories about animals. She should be here any minute." As if on cue, a little girl with red curly hair bounced into the room, followed by an older girl who looked to be about 10. "Miss Margaret, I brought my sister Lucy again. She doesn't have anywhere else to go until Mom picks us up," Emma announced cheerfully. "Of course, Emma. Lucy can read quietly while you work with Miss Sarah." Emma practically glowed with excitement as Margaret introduced them. "Miss Sarah, this is Emma, your reading buddy." "Emma, Miss Sarah works at a school library, so she knows all about books." "Do you really work in a library? That's the best job ever," Emma exclaimed, her enthusiasm infectious. Sarah felt her nervousness melting away. "I do work in a library and I love it. I brought some books I thought you might enjoy." They settled into a cozy corner with cushions on the floor. Emma immediately dove into the bag of books Sarah had brought, exclaiming over each one, "Oh, I love horses. And look, this one has a dog on the cover. Is this about a real dog or a pretend dog?" While Emma chattered about the books, Sarah noticed David and Tommy sitting nearby. David was reading a book about construction trucks, and Tommy was following along, pointing at the pictures and occasionally saying a word or two. There was something gentle and patient about the way David interacted with the boy that caught Sarah's attention. "Miss Sarah, can we read this one about the horse?" Emma asked, pulling Sarah's focus back to her reading buddy. They spent the next hour reading together. Emma was a good reader for her age, but loved having someone's full attention as she worked through the stories. She asked questions about every page and shared her own ideas about what the characters might do next. "My dad used to read to me every night," Emma said during a quiet moment between books. "But he doesn't live with us anymore, and Mom works late most days. Lucy reads to me sometimes, but she says she's too old for picture books." Sarah's heart went out to this bright, chatty little girl who clearly missed having someone to share stories with. "Well, I love reading these books, so we can read as many as you want when we're together." As the session was ending, Sarah noticed David helping Tommy put on his backpack and jacket. The boy seemed reluctant to leave, clinging to David's hand. "See you Thursday, Tommy. We'll finish our truck book then, okay?" David said, crouching down to the boy's level. Tommy nodded and finally let go, walking slowly toward the door where other children were being picked up by parents or walking to the bus. "Tommy's dad brings him here," Margaret explained quietly to Sarah as they cleaned up. "Single father, works 2 jobs to make ends meet. David has been wonderful with him. Tommy barely spoke when he first started coming, but David has really helped him come out of his shell." Sarah watched as David gathered his own things and waved goodbye to the other volunteers. She found herself curious about him, about his story and what brought him to volunteer here. "David's been with us for almost a year," Margaret continued, as if reading Sarah's thoughts. "He's got a real gift with the shy ones. His own daughter comes sometimes during school breaks." "He has a daughter?" Sarah asked, trying to sound casual. "Lucy, she's 12 now. Sweet girl. David's been raising her on his own since she was little. They're very close." Sarah said goodbye to Emma, promising to bring even more animal books on Thursday, and walked out to the parking lot feeling energized. The hour had flown by and she was already looking forward to the next session. As she reached her car, she heard someone call her name. She turned to see David walking toward her, smiling. "How did your first day go?" he asked. "It was wonderful. Emma is such a bright, enthusiastic little girl. How long have you been volunteering here?" "About 10 months now. My daughter Lucy started middle school this year, and she's busy with after-school activities, so I found myself with some free time. Tommy reminds me of Lucy when she was younger, so we clicked right away." They stood talking in the parking lot for a few more minutes. David asked about her work at the library and seemed genuinely interested in her answers. He had an easy way of making conversation that put Sarah at ease. "I'll see you Thursday then," David said as they parted ways. "Yes, see you Thursday," Sarah replied, getting into her car with a smile. Driving home, Sarah realized she felt more energized and happy than she had in months. Not only had she enjoyed her time with Emma, but she had also met other adults who seemed kind and welcoming. The reading family, as David had called it, felt like exactly what she had been missing. That evening, Sarah found herself looking forward to Thursday in a way she hadn't looked forward to anything in a long time. She spent time that night selecting more books for Emma and researching fun reading activities they could do together. For the first time since her lonely birthday, Sarah felt like she belonged somewhere. Thursday's reading session went even better than Tuesday's. Emma greeted Sarah with a huge hug and immediately wanted to show her a drawing she had made of them reading together. The picture showed 2 smiling stick figures sitting under a tree with an open book between them. "I drew this for you, Miss Sarah. See, that's you with the brown hair, and that's me with the curly red hair, and we're reading the horse book." Sarah felt her eyes water slightly at the thoughtful gift. "Emma, this is beautiful. Thank you so much. I'm going to put it on my refrigerator at home." They settled into their usual spot, and Emma pulled out a library book she had checked out since their last meeting. "I got this one because it has a cat on the cover and you said you like cats. Can we read it together?" As they read, Sarah noticed David and Tommy were having what looked like a more animated conversation than usual. Tommy was actually smiling and pointing excitedly at pictures in their book. When she caught David's eye, he grinned and gave her a thumbs up, as if celebrating Tommy's progress. After the reading session, several of the volunteers lingered to chat. Sarah found herself naturally part of the group, discussing their reading buddies and sharing funny things the children had said. She felt accepted in a way she hadn't experienced since before her divorce. "Sarah, are you coming to the volunteer dinner tomorrow night?" asked Janet, an older woman who worked with twin sisters. "Yes, I'm planning to," Sarah replied. "Wonderful. David makes the best brownies." "Don't you, David?" Janet teased. David laughed. "One time I bring homemade brownies instead of store-bought cookies, and now I have a reputation to maintain." "You bake?" Sarah asked, surprised and impressed. "Out of necessity. When Lucy was younger, I learned that homemade treats for school events were much cheaper than buying them, and she preferred them too. Now it's become a hobby." "That's really sweet," Sarah said, meaning it. "What about you? Any hidden talents we should know about?" David asked. Sarah thought for a moment. "I make pretty good soup. It's about the only thing I can cook well, but I make a lot of different kinds." "A soup expert. That's perfect for fall weather," David said warmly. Friday evening, Sarah spent extra time getting ready for the volunteer dinner. She chose a comfortable but flattering sweater and actually put on makeup for the first time in weeks. She felt nervous but excited, like she was going to a party with friends rather than just another obligation. The community center's meeting room had been decorated with simple fall decorations, and several tables were set up with red checkered tablecloths. The smell of pizza filled the air, and volunteers were arriving with various side dishes and desserts. Sarah brought a large container of her homemade vegetable soup, thinking people might enjoy something warm on the chilly evening. She needn't have worried about not knowing anyone. Margaret immediately introduced her to several volunteers she hadn't met yet, and everyone made her feel welcome. David arrived with his daughter Lucy, a tall, serious-looking girl with her father's kind eyes. Lucy was clearly 12 going on 20, with that pre-teen air of being slightly above childish activities, but she was polite when David introduced her to Sarah. "Dad talks about the reading program all the time," Lucy said. "He really likes working with Tommy." "Tommy's made so much progress," Sarah agreed. "Your dad has been really good for him." Lucy smiled at that, and Sarah could see how proud she was of her father. During dinner, Sarah found herself sitting at a table with David, Lucy, Margaret, and 2 other volunteers. The conversation flowed easily, covering everything from funny stories about their reading buddies to recommendations for new children's books. "Sarah brought this amazing soup," Margaret announced to the table. "I had 2 bowls. It smells incredible," David said. "What kind is it?" "Roasted vegetable and white bean. It's my grandmother's recipe, sort of. I've modified it over the years. Would you ever share the recipe?" Lucy asked unexpectedly. "Dad's always looking for new things to cook that aren't just pasta and grilled chicken." "Of course. I'd be happy to write it down for you." Sarah noticed David looking at her with what seemed like appreciation, and she felt warmth spread through her chest that had nothing to do with the soup. After dinner, while people were cleaning up, David approached Sarah with a paper plate of his famous brownies. "Peace offering for Lucy, putting you on the spot about the recipe. She's going through a phase where she critiques my cooking. No offense taken. I'm happy to share it, and these brownies are incredible." Sarah took a bite of the rich, chocolatey dessert. "Seriously, these are restaurant quality." "Thanks. Lucy's been my taste tester for years, so I've had plenty of practice." They stood talking while helping stack chairs and clean tables. Sarah learned that David worked as an accountant, but had always wanted to do something more meaningful with his spare time. He had started volunteering after Lucy encouraged him to find a hobby that didn't involve spreadsheets. "What about you? What made you decide to volunteer?" David asked. Sarah hesitated for a moment, then decided to be honest. "I was feeling pretty isolated. I work with kids all day, but I don't have much adult interaction outside of work. I thought volunteering might help me meet people who care about the same things I do." "Has it worked?" David asked gently. Sarah looked around the room at the other volunteers laughing and chatting as they finished cleaning up. "Yes, I think it has." As people were saying their goodbyes, David asked Sarah if she would like to grab coffee sometime to talk more about working with their reading buddies. "Tommy's been asking about Miss Sarah and Emma," he said with a smile. "I think he has a little crush on Emma." "That would be nice," Sarah said, feeling genuinely pleased by the invitation. "How about Sunday afternoon? There's a coffee shop downtown that's usually quiet on weekends." "Perfect," Sarah agreed, and they exchanged phone numbers. Walking to her car that night, Sarah reflected on how different she felt from just a week ago. Her lonely birthday seemed like it had happened to someone else. She had a purpose now, people who expected her to show up, friends who asked about her recipe and invited her for coffee. Most surprisingly, she found herself looking forward to Sunday afternoon with David. She hadn't been interested in dating since her divorce, had convinced herself she was better off alone. But there was something about David's gentle way with Tommy, his pride in his daughter, his genuine interest in other people, that made her want to know him better. For the first time in 2 years, Sarah felt like her life was expanding instead of shrinking. The volunteer work had given her exactly what she had been missing: community, purpose, and the unexpected possibility of something more. Sunday afternoon arrived with crisp autumn air and golden sunlight filtering through the trees. Sarah found herself changing clothes 3 times before settling on jeans and a soft blue sweater that brought out her eyes. She told herself it was just coffee with a fellow volunteer, but her fluttering stomach suggested otherwise. The coffee shop David had chosen was cozy and warm, with mismatched furniture and local artwork on the walls. Sarah arrived a few minutes early and chose a table by the window where she could watch for David's arrival. She ordered a latte and tried to calm her nerves by people-watching. David appeared right on time, scanning the shop until he spotted Sarah and waved. He looked different outside of the school setting, more relaxed in a casual button-down shirt and dark jeans. When he smiled and walked toward her table, Sarah felt that familiar warmth in her chest. "Sorry if I'm a little late," David said, though he wasn't. "Lucy decided she needed to reorganize her entire room this afternoon, and I got drafted to help move furniture." 12-year-old priorities, Sarah laughed. "I remember being that age and suddenly deciding my room was completely wrong and needed to be completely different immediately." David went to order his coffee, returning with a black coffee and a chocolate chip cookie. "Lucy insisted I needed to eat something. Apparently I get grumpy when I'm hungry, according to my daughter." "She takes good care of you," Sarah observed. "She does. Sometimes I think she's more mature than I am. It's been just the 2 of us for so long that we've become a pretty good team." Sarah found herself curious about David's story but didn't want to pry. Instead, she asked about Tommy's progress in the reading program. "He's like a different kid from when he started," David said, his face lighting up. "His dad told me that Tommy actually asked if they could go to the library last weekend. 6 months ago, he barely spoke to anyone outside his immediate family. That's amazing. Emma talks about him sometimes. She thinks he's very smart but shy. Emma's good for him. She includes him in conversations without making a big deal about it. Kids have such natural instincts about these things." They talked easily about their reading buddies, sharing stories and discussing ideas for activities. Sarah found David's insights thoughtful, and his dedication to helping Tommy genuinely touching. "Can I ask what made you start volunteering?" Sarah asked. "I know you said Lucy encouraged you, but there are lots of hobbies that don't involve spreadsheets." David was quiet for a moment, stirring his coffee thoughtfully. "Lucy's mom died when Lucy was 4, he said finally. "Cancer. It was just the 2 of us after that. And for years I focused entirely on making sure Lucy was okay. Work, home, Lucy's needs, that was my whole world." "I'm so sorry," Sarah said softly. "Thank you. It was hard, but we managed. Lucy started middle school this year and suddenly she's busy with friends and activities, and doesn't need me hovering around all the time. I realized I had built my entire life around taking care of her, which was exactly what I needed to do. But now I needed to figure out who I was beyond being Lucy's dad." Sarah understood that feeling of needing to rebuild an identity. "That makes a lot of sense. The volunteering has been really good for me. It gives me a sense of purpose that's separate from parenting. But it's also helped me be a better dad to Lucy. I have other things to talk to her about now, other ways to feel fulfilled. Lucy seems like an incredible kid. You've done an amazing job raising her." David smiled at that. "She is pretty incredible. She's the one who suggested I try dating again, actually. Apparently I'm too young to be a hermit forever." Her words. Sarah felt her heart skip a beat at the mention of dating. "Smart girl." "She is. She also said I should ask you to dinner sometime instead of just coffee." The directness of his statement caught Sarah off guard, but in the best possible way. "Did she really say that?" "She did. After meeting you Friday night, she announced that you seemed nice and that I should stop being shy and actually ask you out properly. 12-year-olds don't believe in subtlety." Sarah felt herself blushing but managed to maintain eye contact. "What did you tell her?" "That I was working up to it," David said with a grin. She rolled her eyes and said I was hopeless. "Well, Sarah said, feeling braver than she had in years. You can tell Lucy that I would really like to have dinner with you sometime. David's face broke into a wide smile. Really, I was prepared to be nervous about this for at least another week. Really. I haven't been on a date in over 2 years, so I might be a little rusty, but yes, I'd love to. They spent another hour talking, the conversation flowing naturally from books to travel to their childhoods. Sarah learned that David had grown up in the same city and had never really wanted to leave. He learned that Sarah had moved here after college and stayed through her marriage and divorce because she loved the community, even when she felt disconnected from it. I should probably head home, David said eventually, glancing at his watch. Lucy has homework and Sunday evenings are usually when we plan out the week ahead. Of course, Sarah said, though she was disappointed their time together was ending. How about next Friday for dinner? There's a nice Italian place downtown that Lucy recommends. Apparently their breadsticks are epic, according to my food critic daughter. That sounds perfect. As they walked out to the parking lot together, David seemed to hesitate for a moment before speaking. Sarah, I want you to know that this is new territory for me. I haven't dated anyone since Lucy's mom, and I'm probably going to be awkward and overthink everything. David, Sarah said gently, I'm divorced and just came out of 2 years of self-imposed isolation. We can figure out awkward together. He laughed at that, a genuine, relieved sound. Lucy's going to be so pleased with herself for being right about this. She sounds like a wise kid. She is. She also said that if things work out with us, she wants to officially meet Emma since Tommy talks about her so much. Apparently, we might need to consider group playdates in the future. The idea of their lives potentially intertwining in that way, of becoming not just 2 people dating but 2 small families connecting, felt both thrilling and terrifying to Sarah. But looking at David's hopeful expression, she realized she was ready for that possibility. I think Emma would love that, Sarah said. Driving home, Sarah felt like she was floating. She had a date, her first real date in years, with a man who seemed genuine and kind and who made her laugh. More than that, she felt like she was finally building the life she had always wanted, one connection at a time. Her phone buzzed with a text message as she pulled into her apartment parking lot. It was from David. Lucy says to tell you that you passed the first test by being nice to me and liking books. The second test is surviving dinner with me without running away. No pressure. Sarah laughed out loud in her car and texted back, Tell Lucy I'm up for the challenge. See you Tuesday at Reading Buddies. That evening, Sarah called her parents for the second time in a month. She told them about her volunteer work and, hesitantly, about David. Her mother seemed pleased that Sarah was getting out and meeting people. It sounds like you're building a nice life for yourself there, sweetheart, her mother said, and Sarah heard genuine warmth in her voice for the first time in years. I am, Mom. I really am. As Sarah got ready for bed, she looked at Emma's drawing on her refrigerator and smiled. Just 2 weeks ago, she had sat alone on her birthday feeling forgotten and invisible. Now she had a reading buddy who drew her pictures, a volunteer family that welcomed her, and a date with a man who made her feel hopeful about the future. She thought about her birthday wish, that simple plea for things to get better. It seemed like the universe had been listening after all. 3 months later, Sarah woke up on a crisp January morning to the smell of pancakes and the sound of laughter coming from her kitchen. She smiled before even opening her eyes, still sometimes amazed at how different her life had become. Morning, sleepyhead, Emma called out as Sarah emerged from her bedroom in her robe. The little girl was standing on a step stool at the stove, carefully flipping pancakes with David's supervision. Emma insisted on making breakfast for your birthday, David explained, wrapping his arms around Sarah from behind and kissing the top of her head. Though I think she's eaten half the batter already. It's research, Emma protested with a giggle. I have to make sure they taste good. Lucy sat at the kitchen table, rolling her eyes but smiling at Emma's antics. She's been awake since 6 planning this breakfast, Lucy said. Dad had to drag me out of bed to help. Sarah's apartment had transformed over the past few months. Where once it had felt empty and quiet, it now buzzed with life. David and Lucy spent most weekends here, and Emma had become a regular fixture after her reading sessions expanded into homework help, and then occasional sleepovers with Lucy. The 4 of them had become an unexpected but perfectly fitting family unit. Lucy had appointed herself as Emma's big sister, teaching her about makeup and music and middle school drama. Emma adored Lucy and followed her around like a devoted puppy. David had seamlessly integrated into Sarah's life, bringing warmth and laughter and a sense of partnership she had never experienced before. "Happy birthday, Sarah," Tommy said quietly from his spot at the table, where he was carefully arranging birthday napkins. His transformation over the months had been remarkable. He now spoke in full sentences, participated in group activities, and had even made friends with some of the other children in the reading program. Tommy's father had become part of their extended circle too. Mike worked long hours but always made time to thank Sarah and David for the positive impact they had made on his son. Sometimes he joined them for weekend activities, and Sarah had watched him slowly begin to believe that it was okay to let other people help him care for Tommy. "Thank you, Tommy," Sarah said, giving him a hug. "Did you help plan this surprise?" Tommy nodded proudly. "I drew you a picture. It's a surprise for after breakfast." The kitchen table was set with Sarah's good dishes and decorated with handmade place cards that Emma had created. In the center sat a beautiful bouquet of flowers and a small pile of wrapped gifts. "This is too much," Sarah said, feeling tears prick at her eyes. "You guys didn't need to do all this." "Are you kidding?" Lucy said. "You let us take over your apartment every weekend and you cook for us constantly. Plus, Emma said your last birthday was sad, so we had to make this one extra special." Sarah glanced at David, who nodded slightly. She had told him about her lonely birthday that had led her to the community center, and apparently he had shared an appropriate version with the girls. "Besides," David added, "this is our first birthday celebration as a family. We wanted to do it right." The word family still gave Sarah butterflies. They had been officially dating for 3 months, but it felt like they had known each other much longer. The relationship had progressed naturally from coffee dates to dinners to weekend activities with the girls. 2 weeks ago, David had asked if she would like him to leave some clothes at her apartment, and last weekend they had started looking at houses together. "Okay, presents first or breakfast first?" Emma asked, bouncing with excitement. "Breakfast first," David said firmly, "before those pancakes get cold." They gathered around the table and Sarah marveled at the scene. Her dining room, which had been used maybe twice in the 2 years she had lived here, was full of people she loved, celebrating her birthday with homemade food and genuine joy. "I have an announcement," David said as they started eating. "Lucy has something she wants to ask Sarah." Lucy suddenly looked nervous, fidgeting with her napkin. Dad and I have been talking and we know you guys are looking at houses and thinking about the future and stuff." "Lucy, just ask her," Emma said impatiently. "I was wondering if, when you and Dad get married, I could call you Mom," Lucy said in a rush, then looked down at her plate. Sarah felt her breath catch. She and David had talked about marriage, but tentatively as something for the future. They hadn't discussed it with the girls yet. "Lucy," Sarah said gently, "that would be the greatest honor of my life." Lucy looked up with bright eyes. "Really? Because I don't really remember my mom very much, and you take care of us and cook for us and help with homework and come to my soccer games." "Really," Sarah said firmly, "though you should know that you never have to call me anything you're not comfortable with. I'll love you just as much no matter what you call me." "I want to call you Mom," Lucy said with conviction. "Emma said I should, and I think she's right." "When did you two plan this?" David asked, looking between the girls with amusement. "Last weekend when you and Sarah were looking at houses online," Emma said matter-of-factly. "We decided that if you're going to be a real family, everyone should know what to call everyone else." David reached over and took Sarah's hand. "Well, since the girls have decided our future for us, I guess I should make this official." He pulled a small box from his pocket and got down on one knee right there in the kitchen. Sarah gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. "Sarah," David said, his voice slightly shaky with nerves, 6 months ago, I thought my life was exactly what it was supposed to be. Then you showed up at the reading program and everything got better. You've made me a better father, a better man, and a happier person. You've brought joy and laughter into our lives, and Lucy and I can't imagine our future without you. And Emma can't either," Emma added loudly, making everyone laugh. "And Emma can't either," David continued with a grin. "Will you marry me? Will you be Lucy's mom and Emma's honorary aunt and Tommy's reading buddy forever?" "Yes," Sarah said through happy tears. "Yes to all of it." David slipped the ring onto her finger, and she pulled him up for a kiss while the girls cheered and Tommy clapped excitedly. I can't believe you proposed at my birthday breakfast. Sarah laughed. Lucy said your birthday should be the best day ever since your last one was so sad, David explained. She thought a proposal would definitely qualify as the best day ever. It does, Sarah said, looking around at her kitchen full of people who loved her. It absolutely does. After breakfast, they opened presents. Emma had made Sarah a photo album filled with pictures from their reading sessions and family activities. Lucy had written her a letter about how glad she was that Sarah had come into their lives. Tommy had drawn a picture of all of them together under a rainbow. David had gotten her a beautiful necklace with a charm that said family in elegant script. As they cleaned up the breakfast dishes together, Sarah thought about the journey that had brought her to this moment. Her forgotten birthday had felt like rock bottom, sitting alone with a store-bought cake and a single candle. But that loneliness had motivated her to reach out, to volunteer, to open herself up to new possibilities. She looked at her engagement ring sparkling in the morning sunlight and at David teaching Emma how to properly load the dishwasher while Lucy and Tommy dried dishes and chatted about their plans for the day. In just 6 months, she had gone from being alone and forgotten to being surrounded by love and planning a future with a man who cherished her, and children who had chosen her as family. She had gone from feeling invisible to being at the center of a beautiful, chaotic, perfect life. What are you thinking about? David asked, noticing her thoughtful expression. Just how different this birthday is from last year, Sarah said. How different everything is. Better different? He asked, though his smile suggested he already knew the answer. The best different, Sarah confirmed, standing on her toes to kiss him while Emma made exaggerated gagging sounds and Lucy laughed. Outside, snow began to fall gently, and Sarah realized that she had never been happier to be exactly where she was, surrounded by her chosen family, celebrating not just her birthday but the beautiful life they were building together. Her wish had come true in ways she never could have imagined.